And on behalf of the Planning Committee, just want to say we are so thrilled and grateful that you've joined us today. MIRL stands for Medical Institutional Repositories in Libraries. And the MIRL Symposium is a free annual event that is held virtually for librarians and library staff in healthcare settings who are involved in their institutional repositories as a way to gather, connect, and discuss topics that are relevant to their unique roles. This is our fourth year of MIRL, and we're really excited to keep this community going strong. MIRL continues to be fortunate by having attendees and presenters able to attend from all over the world. So we have about 350 registrants this year, which includes folks from Canada, France, India, Lebanon, Nigeria, St. Kitts and Nevis, Spain, Switzerland, Taiwan, the United Kingdom, and 46 US states, as well as Washington, DC. So we're very excited to have you all here today. I have just a couple notes to share before we begin. We are recording all sessions unless the presenter has requested otherwise. Recordings will be posted as soon as possible. You can visit the MIRL website or watch your email for a link to the recordings and slides. It may take a little bit to get together, but we'll let you know as soon as those are ready. If you join our Google group, which you can see there's MIRL_symposium at googlegroups.com. We'll be sure to share the link there as well. And if you want to stay involved in the conversation, it's a good place to go to stay connected with MIRL. We are using the same link all day, the same Zoom link, so you can come and go as needed using that same link. If you need to leave the meeting, just go back to your invitation, your confirmation email, and then come back to the Zoom meeting. If you post to social media, please use the hashtag MIRL24. All attendees will have their mics muted and video off. Please enter any and all questions into the Q&A function within Zoom. You'll find that option toward the bottom of your screen. Questions posted in chat may not receive an answer, so be sure to put that in the Q&A. But you are encouraged to use chat to network or chat with colleagues, especially during the breaks. I would argue that connecting with others has rarely been more important than it is right now. If you're having technical difficulties using Zoom, you may want to leave the meeting and join back in. Sometimes that takes care of any technical issues. Also double check that you have the right audio output selected. At the end of our event, when you leave Zoom, you'll see a survey pop up. Please consider completing this survey as it does impact how we program the next year's event. The full schedule has been shared in the chat. Thank you, Lisa. It's also available on the MIRL website, but here's a glimpse of it. Please note the 3 different break times. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce the MIRL planning group. I'm very grateful to work with such fun people. I want to thank them for their hard work planning this event. MIRL Planning Committee is Lisa Buda at Rochester Regional Health, Jennifer Deal at Advocate Health Midwest, Anthony Della Furicchio at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, Sarah Hoover at the National Institutes of Health Library, Ramona Cabilius at Galter Health Sciences Library and Learning Center at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. I'm Stephen Moore at Sladen Library, Henry Ford Hospital, Gabadeo Odolaro of Howard University, and Lisa Palmer of Lamar Souder Library at the UMass Chan Medical School. We'll now hand things off to Sarah, who will introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello again to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sarah Hoover, and I'm currently the Scholarly Communications Librarian at the NIH Library. As Stephen mentioned, I'm one of the MIRL Planning Committee members, and today I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker for the 2024 symposium. Dr. Jennifer Beamer is currently the visiting program officer for the U.S. Repository Network, where she works with a range of library and repository professionals to help develop a strategic vision for U.S. repositories. Dr. Beamer also works as the Senior Assistant Scholarly Communications Librarian at the California State University San Bernardino. And from November 2023 to June 2024, she was a Fulbright Scholar at the National Institutes of Informatics in Tokyo, so staying busy. Today, her talk is entitled Breaking Down Silos, USRN and the Future of Repository Networks. Welcome, Dr. Beamer.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll take a moment here to make sure I share well. If everybody can pause for a second here. Oh, and have I shared well? Okay, and I will thank you so much. Okay.
We're seeing the presenter mode now, so looks great.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. Always technical. I'm also experiencing a lot of sunlight this morning in California, and I can't seem to get out of it somehow. So I apologize for that. Although maybe that's good, because I think, as Stephen alluded to, it's really important these days to make connections. And also I've been trying to be very positive about many things that are coming our way. And so I hope today, during this keynote, which I'm very humbled and thrilled to be doing, to be invited to the MIRL community. Thank you so much. I'm hoping to keep this on a really positive note. I welcome your questions at the end of the keynote, and I am hoping that we can have a great discussion about the importance of repositories and where they're going to go. And so without further ado, I will move on to the next slide. Again, thanks so much for inviting me. Sarah introduced me, and I am in these two roles presently, as the visiting program officer for the U.S. Repository Network, as well as my daily life is composed of being a scholarly communications librarian, which I really love. I also had originally put on this slide my bumper sticker, which is I love repositories. My whole librarian career has actually been embedded or entrenched, or I'm not sure. I started out as a repository manager while I was going to library school. And so I've had the privilege of working in repositories and with those who are supporting research infrastructure and repositories. For the last 10 years, I swapped careers from being a textile professor to being a librarian. So I feel really privileged to be in this moment and in these two roles right now. I come to you today with a little bit of an agenda here. I want to tell you a bit about the context of the U.S. Repository Network, which I'll refer to as USRN from here on out. How we came about developing the group and the strategic vision for the group, who is sort of in this current governance role, which we're evaluating and evolving all the time. What our activities have been. We have an action plan. And then also a little bit about the discovery pilot that we've been working on, as well as what is the future. And again, I hope we'll have kind of a conversation at the end about what you see is the future too, because I'm just one person with one point of view. So the context of the USRN, I think, is very similar to the medical institutional repositories in libraries community. I think as we were seeing sort of in 2017 with the buyout of various infrastructures that were supporting libraries and institutions, we started to think about our community a bit more, about how in libraries, with policy together, how we could sort of get together and sort of build communities around infrastructure that we maybe didn't own necessarily, but infrastructure that we support and and do deep work in. And so again, I think this was reinforced with the Nelson memo of coming out of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. We saw that we have an opportunity to sort of catalyze around this policy, and sort of maybe if we don't own the infrastructure, as we had been discussing for many years prior, that maybe we had a chance to really build our community. And I've read several of the MIRL reports and your sort of community organization context. And I think in a similar way, we saw the need for kind of this gathering or building of this community. And I'll answer questions more about this later. I don't want to ramble on because, again, you can probably tell I'm quite passionate about repositories and getting together to help each other out. So really, the USRN is a partnership between the Scholarly Publishing and Academic Resources Coalition, known as SPARC, which I'm sure you've seen, and also a partnership with the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, known as COAR, not to be confused with the other COAR, which I'll talk about shortly. But again, both groups have a lot of membership that focus around supporting repositories, making sure that we have good policies and practices, acting as advocates for those repositories, either in our institutions or federally. And so this just seemed kind of like a natural partnership to start the USRN. And so originally the USRN just started with us talking. My predecessor, Tina Bosch, gathered us all, gathered the many voices that were talking about repositories in SPARC, in COAR, and sort of fed us this survey, this modernizing survey, asking us these 4 questions. And it was sent out very broadly across the US and Canada. And we all answered, what did we think were the most pressing situations at our institutions? And of course, these were the results. We all knew that we were sort of institutionally siloed, and either that was based on the platforms that we ran, or based on just the inability to sort of like connect with each other at a distance. We also recognize that even though we've been working in these open spaces and working with repositories for 15 or so years, or 15 plus years for many of us, that there really was a lack of visibility and recognition, especially among other stakeholders. Certainly, I think as librarians, we have been advocating with the people who are closest to us, but making connections externally, we think is really important as well. We also recognize that there was underfunding for repository operations, and this is one area that I'm really passionate about in terms of sustainable labor. Many of us who run repositories, myself included, at every institution, it's sort of been the add-on operation that I added to my position because I needed to run the repository in order to go out and advocate for people to put things to make deposits in the repository. And so the human element, I think, is something that's really recognized in our conversations as we discuss moving forward. How do we build sort of this social and human infrastructure around the technical infrastructures that we're operating? We also acknowledge that many of us are running old versions of software platforms, and this also has led to many discussions around how do we compete with publishing platforms? Where do we fit in terms of the future of supporting our faculty, our colleagues in getting their work into repositories and made fully open? So as we started to kind of coalesce around these questions, we came up with these kind of activities that we thought would be very helpful moving forward in the USRN. And of course, as always, advocacy on the role and importance of repositories. Of course, advocating for increased staffing, as I mentioned, investigating the feasibility of shared infrastructure. And I've committed, as Sarah mentioned, I've been over in Japan a few times as part of my dissertation, as part of a Fulbright, and as part of some future work that I'm going to be working on through an NSF award. I've been investigating their sort of shared infrastructure. They have a nationwide repository. And what would that look like in the US? I have no idea. But I think as communities, there's many sort of, sorry, I lost the word, consortial IRs. We see Palni and Palsy. We've had conversations here in California around private institutions advocating for a consortial IR amongst 115 private institutions. So we wonder if sort of sharing some of our infrastructure and the coordination around that would work. As well as training and capacity building, as I alluded to, and then also sort of this collaborative approach to updating platforms and also to, and I haven't specifically highlighted it here, but also to shared guidelines and shared practices that might make some of our work a little less heavy. And then also this idea of this radical collaboration to improve repository services, metadata and PIDs, as I'll mention in an upcoming slide, is a really important part of what's coming down the line, especially in light of the Nelson memo. So really the clear priority for us is to break down institutional silos and have a more cohesive approach and greater collaboration. And I think, again, I'd love to talk about your feelings on that since you have an existing community. We'd like to also, I guess, and here again, why, when we're asked, is to increase collaboration and coherence, and also to strengthen the voice of repositories. And slowly but surely, we're doing that in different ways, which I will show you here in a couple slides. We are becoming sort of a better voice, maybe, in the federal space, and also it's sort of speaking up against sort of myths and maybe misnomers around what repositories are. And really, I think this leads to sort of our vision of what we believe the US repository network is, and that's a very inclusive network. We're committed to advancing all repositories in the US, and that is, it refers to all open research repositories, regardless of content, host, or platform. The platform is not our concern at all. We believe that community and the social aspects can sort of release us from this idea of the platform matters. We also believe that repositories are essential components of the national research infrastructure, that they ensure a more equitable and inclusive landscape. They're key institutional tools. They ensure repository outputs are discoverable, visible, accessible for future use, and they also present an opportunity for new and innovative modes of publishing. So in order to develop this vision, again, it wasn't just a few people. We actually gathered together a 63-member expert group, and that was librarians, administrators, we had US COAR members, SPARC steering committee members, library leaders, repository managers, and consortium leaders. And we also included the Coalition of Open Access Policy Institutions, or COPE. You may be familiar with them if you have an open access policy on your campus. We convened some of our OpenCon librarians. And we had quite a few public comments sessions via surveys and live sessions. And here's sort of the breakdown of the expert group. We were sure to, we made sure that we included a variety of institutions. Since I have been working at smaller private institutions and now a more smaller R2 public institution at Cal State, I have always been a big advocate of the smaller institutions, recognizing that maybe we don't have a large chunk of the money to build our repository and build the social infrastructure around it. But you can see here, we believe we got a pretty good percentage of comment from a variety of institutions based on the full-time enrollment. We also wanted to ensure that we had a large number of sort of demographically based institutions. And you can see the largest number was actually from the West, surprisingly enough, but perhaps that's when we look into the data, we see a lot of California institutions that participated. The Midwest was also high. The Southwest, Southeast, and Northeast also very high, which is great. There's a number of communities in the Northeast that are wonderful communities. And so today, as we stand, and I mentioned we sort of are always evolving our strategy, but moving forward in the future, this interoperable network is really this essential component that we're operating around. We want to be able to offer open access to research rapidly, and really catalyzing this strategy based on the Nelson memo is really at the forefront of our minds, that we're trying to move quickly. We're trying to engage with as many federal agencies as we can, commenting on their policies coming out of the public access policy via the Nelson memo. And also too, at the heart of this is we really want to make sure that our vision leads to more open, inclusive, and equitable system. And I hope I'll elaborate on that in the future slide here as well. So originally we came up with these foundational characteristics, and I think nothing's really very surprising about these. I know we all, or many of us, practice these as librarians every day in our positions. I think some of the things that are highlights for many of us are the sustainability part, the collaboration part, and definitely the interoperability. And that, I think, in my opinion, the interoperability is really one of the biggest barriers we have if our platforms are not belonging to us, to the community. But we are still having a lot of discussions around what this looks like. And thanks to having sort of a governance structure, we have, again, a lot of voices convening around how to proceed in the future. We have a steering group that we consult as well, all who are leaders in the open spaces, and also from a diverse range of institutions. Currently, our co-chairs are Vicki Coleman at North Carolina A&T State University, and we have a new co-chair, Christy Holmes at Northwestern University, who has moved into a sort of a data position and can give us a little bit of a different perspective on how data repositories might fit into the USRN. And so we're really excited about going back and looking at our strategy in light of the last few weeks and seeing how we can sort of move forward no matter what happens. So initially, back in 2022 and 2023, we also came up with our action plan. The action plan really, again, focused on these 4 points. And we've spent a lot of time so far, as I mentioned, connecting with federal agencies, making sure they know who the USRN is. Also, advocating as we respond to the federal agency plans that are being rolled out. All of them have a comment period, and you can see at our USRN website and also at the SPARC website our public comments to each and every plan that has been released so far, including that advocacy really includes a lot of conversation around using our repositories, the existing repositories, as places to make open research available, sort of pushing back on the whole sort of conversation around publishers and using, this hybrid or gold paid system of APCs. And so we've been really strong in highlighting that this shouldn't be a venue, or not that this shouldn't be a venue, but that there are alternative venues for scholars, researchers to post their work openly, that it's not the only avenue. And we'll see how this plays out over time, I guess. Again, I welcome your questions on this as after I'm finished the keynote here. So during our 2023 year, we felt like we had a lot of outcomes. We sent a letter to OSTP. All of these are publicly viewable as well on the USRN website. We also drafted and published what we think is a really great document on the desirable characteristics of digital publication repositories. And there's a link in this slide and as well on the USRN website. And this really, this document has sort of been kind of the key to some of our work moving forward. We comment on, and I'll show you part of the document in a moment, the best practices to support the OSTP requirements for repositories. And this was done with my predecessor, Tina, and our working group, which again, I'll share in a moment here. We also shared these desirable characteristics with OSTP, with NSTC, the Subcommittee on Open Science, and with some federal funding agencies as well. And we've been having some discussions around what these characteristics might look like moving forward. We are hoping that others will adopt them, and we are excited that they exist as a starting point to sort of step off of. We built them based on these three sort of core other documents that existed. If you're familiar with those, that's great. If not, again, the links are here in the slides that I'll share. We also tapped a really great working group to sort of start us off and launch us into sort of boundaries around this, because I think maybe many of you understand, as when you start talking about desirable characteristics of repositories, there's all kinds of voices and all kinds of practices, and we wanted to sort of firm up what those would be. Since the USRN is very inclusive, one of the main discussions that we had a lot around these desirable characteristics was what is the feasibility of them for various stakeholders who may not have the top of the line repository or may not have enough staffing to do to ensure that all the metadata is how we would like it to be. But also we balance this with sort of the necessity of having sort of these baseline characteristics that everyone could work with. And so I think I can confidently say that those characteristics are guiding us as we move forward. And again, as all things that we do, we evaluate them over time and see if they're working. And so they will evolve. I imagine there'll be a 2.0 and a 3.0 and a et cetera coming up. And so these are really the subsets of the characteristics. And again, I would welcome your feedback once you take a look and see what you think of them. Again, they're based on sort of a basic feasible guideline. All of these things I know you're familiar with in terms of how we manage the deposits that we're putting in our repositories. And I think there's been three that we have really focused on. And one is this sort of free and easy, sorry, discoverability and access. Of course, I've highlighted, I won't read them to you, but I think these are sort of the fundamental beliefs that we all have, that we really want our colleagues' work to be discoverable, that it's equitable. I think we all dream that it would be machine and human readable formats at no cost to anybody. And again, also that it would be ADA compliant and also discoverable, via the repository, and then also widely discoverable externally, so that everybody would have access to it without having to navigate too hard. We also are really excited and also focusing on PIDs. And I know we've heard a lot of talk about PIDs recently with our federal agencies, policies being released. And we believe this is, again, very important to us to talk about. We are looking for communities that are talking about PIDs a lot. If you know, or if you are, please send me an email. We would like to have a discussion more about PIDs, the importance of this. I think, and certainly having it connected to within and to our repositories is part of this idea that we would be interoperable. Finally, metadata. Again, I think metadata is for me, it's kind of the bane of my existence. At the same time, I love metadata. I really want my faculty to have a voice in the metadata that they supply when they deposit their works. But at the same time, I want metadata to be discoverable, reusable, and using the schema that's appropriate to the community, as well as the repository community in general. And so I think, again, these conversations around these sort of three really important characteristics are going to grow and are going to be exciting places to have discussions. And so again, if you are interested in this or know a lot about it or have a community, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So along with the USRN network, we had the excellent opportunity to be part of a discovery pilot. And our discovery pilot has been going for about a year now. We, again, wanted to do this sort of, or take a group of repositories that ranged in, were diverse, not necessarily, all research-heavy institutions. But the object was really to improve discoverability, interoperability, and research outputs, and to track some of the activities that were going on in the US repositories. We had 23 institutions volunteer to be part of the discovery pilot. And this involved a use of services from COAR, who is a not-for-profit aggregator based at Open University in the UK, and additional technical support for us was provided by Antleaf Limited. And I understand that Michael Upshaw is here to talk a little bit about our discovery pilot. And so I'm not going to get into the deep technical details of what we did, but I'd love to give you sort of some highlights to how it's going, how it went, and what are the outputs from this discovery pilot. We started off again with a survey and sort of an environmental scan of the interests of this pilot group. And you can find at the Discovery Pilot the list of repositories that were included in the Discovery Pilot. I volunteered before I was the visiting program officer, and I've been part of the Discovery Pilot. And I would say it's been very important for me and for my institution to have been involved. My institution has a dual repository. We have a lot of special collections in the repository along with scholarly publications. And so we've had some really interesting conversations around what this looks like for us moving forward. How do we apply certain things for scholarly for scholarly works to also to special collections works. And so again, when in being asked, these questions by Antleaf and by COAR, it really made some of the Discovery Pilot participants think about what were the practices versus our technical resources. What what were the supports we needed, and also were we interested in adopting new functionalities and innovations that also might help us in our repository work. And so with the help of COAR, they provided us this wide depository index service, which is a COAR dashboard, which we could look at. It would send us, notifications if we had full text that was missing from our various records, etc. They also provided us with documentation of best practices to improve discoverability and interoperability. And all of their I believe their COAR data providers guide is available openly at their website. They also provided us with some, and they are working on, based on some of our answers to the survey, and as we work, providing us with new tools to support U.S. repositories in their our local contexts. For example, I think one of the things that I would really value is being able to see when federally funded research on my campus has completed or has been published. I would love to know, should I be reaching out to that author to ask them to put in the repository rather than me, having to scan around. It takes a lot of effort to sort of figure out who's doing what. I have a close connection to my research office, but even then, things fall through the cracks. We also are building, and COAR and Antleaf gave us a really great start on this USRN repository toolkit, and it's openly available as well. And if you're interested in providing feedback, you're more than welcome to register on GitHub and then let us know that you would like to provide some feedback. It's based on our desirable characteristics document. We focused in on several of those desirable characteristics to start, and then our community of Discovery Pilot participants is going to keep building this out over time. Okay, how's my time? So I'm a little bit fast, but I'll tell you, I think, a little bit. I hope that gives you kind of an idea of what we've been doing in the USRN. And perhaps I see the chat is populating with questions, so I haven't looked yet. But I will tell you a little bit. This is my last slide. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the future. And I will probably get a bit passionate and also, I guess, want to share with you some of my thoughts and feelings around what's happening in repositories and get out of the sun here. I welcome your comments and feedback on my thoughts. I might be naive. My nickname was often Dreamer Beamer through school. And so I really like to think more about the big picture. So yeah, and I believe I'm talking to my people here. So, but again, I welcome great conversations. So, I guess without further ado, my thoughts on the future of the USRN and IRs are very similar. I think over the past few years, we've seen this kind of building IR communities. And I am really excited. I have to admit, I have been following the medical institutional repositories and libraries community for a while. I'm not a medical librarian, so I haven't participated, but I've been watching you. And I have also been attending some of the other communities as in my librarian practice, certainly SMIRC, if I'm saying it wrong, please tell me, but Southern Miss is one that has been around for a while. The Digital Initiatives Symposium out of San Diego, the Northeastern Institutional Repository Day I've been to several times. And I have attended on and off the Digital Commons North American Conference because my former institution and this current institution are Digital Commons subscribers. But again, I feel like, we really do need to build these IR communities. As many of us are isolated in our own institution, we're the only one who's working on these topics. We have advocates as other librarians, but we're the people, sort of doing the work, pressing the buttons behind the scenes, and making this happen, as well as advocating. And so I think that is, a very isolating feeling at times, and also really overwhelming. And so I think spaces like MIRL, spaces like these other communities are really places that we can, talk to each other, find out what's going on, build the community together. And so I'm really in awe that, you've put together so many great documents, talking about your community, its inclusiveness and its diversity. And I hope you continue doing that. And I hope that, my dreamer wants us to all come together in some way. And I don't know what that looks like, because I feel also like sort of these niche communities are really important. But I hope that we can all have conversations together in the future and keep building on this idea of community. I also hope, and I'm going to stay positive here, but I'm also hoping that we will continue to acknowledge that IRs provide equitable access. And I think coming up in the future, we might have to change the way change our language around this idea of equitable access. I think even in our comments to federal agencies coming up, this kind of like equitable may not be the right words to use. But I think, the discoverability, impact, those kinds of things are going to be ever more important as we sort of advocate for what repositories are going to be doing in the future. And then finally, I believe that we really must continue to advocate for open access repositories. I know this is being recorded, but I am just really, this week, I'm caught up in a lot of like copyright issues around, taking things and having faculty scan them and put them in AI tools, which are being run by, analytics companies, I'll say, I won't give names, that are coming to our campuses to say we need to do this. And if it continues this sort of like, we need to circumvent things in order to do other things, my feelings are that we really, we really need to have materials open, machine readable, and this is really the way that we can proceed if we want to make advances. I believe that there's value in our repositories, and I believe that for me it's kind of the first thing on my mind when I go talk to administrators. All schools are competing for each other with each other too, right? Like to show who's doing this or that. And so I think if we can find the right language, if we can talk amongst each other as a community, what's being successful, I think those things are reproducible, on our other campuses as well. Repositories are just going to play, they are playing, and they're going to just play such a big role in what's coming. And I, again, I'm really grateful that you have this community to talk with each other. And I hope that we'll all be talking to each other soon. I will now open it up to questions, and I welcome your questions, comments, and feedback. I also hope that if you're interested in the USRN, you can get involved, and at the very minimum, you can get involved by just joining our community Google group. We send out updates on various topics here and there, and it's really kind of like a low barrier to just keep getting information about us. And again, I thank you so much for listening to me today. Sorry for the sun and a little bit of my babbling. But again, I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm going to stick around for the conference too, because there's such diversity in what you're talking about today. I'm very excited to be here. So thank you again. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much again, Jennifer. We really appreciated it. I think everybody's first question is going to be where we get these IR-related bumper stickers. I think there's going to be a huge run on those. But in all seriousness, I think within IR communities, we have the tendency to talk a lot about the technical infrastructure and maybe less about the social and human infrastructure. And I think you've done a really nice job covering how USRN helps with that piece. Happy to open it up to questions now through the Q&A. I think there's a few already in the chat, just scanning back to the ones we have. People seem to be really interested. First question was, has creating a common data element CDE guide or repository been considered to facilitate metadata sharing? So like the CDE, common elements was the first one.
Yeah, so I'm not aware, and as I see all your questions here of is there this or that thing, it would be great to have a location. I'm not sure if we have, I'm not aware of one US repository, all things, everything there location. I'm not sure if anyone else is aware of that location, but it would be good to start. I'll take that back to everybody. So yeah, I'm not sure if something like that exists, but I think it would definitely be a good thing. I think one of the key and most exciting things about the Nelson memo has been this element of data. And I have a funny feeling everybody's going to sort of wake up the night before and be like, data? What do you mean data? And so I think whatever we can provide early, or even starting discussions early will be a great thing. And I'm sorry that doesn't specifically answer the question. Is it Ellen that asked? But yeah, Ellen, I think this would be a place that we should talk and start putting resources somewhere for people.
Okay, great. I have a million. I just put 2 in as comments.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I see them. I'm going to try to save all the chat here. Yeah. So are there, I think, is it, how do you say Ramune?
Ramuna.
Ramuna? Sorry. Are there any unique characteristics? So at this point, again, we're sort of really just kind of doing the sort of like low barrier entry for everybody. We know there's a lot of repositories that maybe don't have the capacity to sort of like do all the extra, research and information gathering on what would where to start. And most, I think, even at my institution, we have a very bare kind of skeletal metadata, and we just put that in and get it out. Like, we just want to make it discoverable as soon as possible. But I will add this because I think this data view, again, is really important, and most likely data will be sort of this idea of interoperable, right? We'll have different systems to figure out, and we'll be figuring out how we can connect them in some way. So that's a really great question. If I may add it to my list, I would love to do that. And then your second one, so you mentioned Fulbright experience. Yeah, so there are other bridges that are being built, and I've been trying to connect Michael and the National Institute for Informatics, because I also think, let's share all of this information. And so there are some other tools being built in Japan. I'm not sure so much about the European Repository Network. This might be a good question for Michael, because he's been doing some work sort of exploring in Europe. And Michael, I don't want to put you on the spot if you're here, but we've been having some discussions around looking more internationally about what's been happening. Yeah, I'm not sure that answers your question very well. But I'll add it to my list if possible, if that's okay. Xiyong, do you have a list of institutional repositories that offer restricted access? This is very fascinating. We have had a conversation recently about the list of repositories. And I'm sure if any of you have gone to see what repositories exist in the US, you may have gone to like Open Door. Yeah. And the funny thing about, and as you probably know about Open Door, is it's self-reported data. So, and it's sort of a very basic, it's hard to tell what is happening in each repository or if it even still exists. And so working with COAR, COAR, my understanding is that in the future, we're going to have or try to have a sort of more developed directory, especially for the US. We also are hoping to send out sort of like a survey, but again, the labor around collecting all of this and double checking repositories is hard to get. And so we are trying to think of ways that we can figure out who has what and what platform, and collect all of the data. Yes, so Open Door, and so I believe it's updated pretty regularly. There are some checkers at Open Door, but again, it's a sort of a never-ending process to keep us all up to date. So we're talking about those kinds of lists, or building some kind of database. But yeah. So thanks, Lisa. Thanks for putting the links in there to sign up. We hope in the future we'll be adding more people to the discovery pilot or moving it forward in a certain way. So if you're interested, again, please reach out at any time with questions. Has increasing comma data elements guide been considered? It hasn't, Ellen, so we should. And again, I will add that into the mix when we talk with Kirsty coming up here about, oh yes, and the publicly available standards as well. Yes. So yes, I will add these. It's so good. I love this community already. So now I need a I love MIRL sticker too. So awesome. And then John Goodall. Yes. So John, I have for many years, so my I don't want to get into the depths of my dissertation, but the title of my dissertation was Social Technological Infrastructure. It's in there in that big long title somewhere. And so, yeah, I'm really quite concerned about this sort of human labor aspect. It's a lot. And certainly, I think if you're a person who's by yourself, working on an infrastructure, it's a concern. And I also am very concerned about my platform at my university. Although I just recently learned that the other Cal states are working on a different platform. So, often you get stuck with the platform because you're a smaller institution. And then it takes a really heavy lift by a human to get you onto something else. And so I think those, sharing those kinds of stories and concerns. I also, for many years tried to convince, I used to work at the Claremont colleges and was trying to convince them to get off digital commons. But of course, it was very hard as one person to make a case for that because there wasn't a lot of shared information around about how people did get off one platform and move to another platform. I think Penn State, maybe, when they jumped off of bpress in 2018, I think they called it bprexit or something. They gave us like spreadsheets and spreadsheets of decision making, which then sort of needed to be kind of like interpreted for administration. And so, yeah, exactly, we outgrew it to move from one next class. Yeah, so again, the decision making around those kinds of big technical changes is really hard. And so I feel like humans, we need to band together and we need to figure out sort of sustainable ways for us to support, the work in this space. So yeah, it's something to think about, and also something that I will continue to keep on the top of the agenda. So
Thank you so much. I think that's a great place to kind of leave us, and very important things for us to consider, because I think, how we move, how we utilize the platforms for this bigger vision is something as IR managers we're all kind of considering. So thank you so much again for joining us today. I am sure people will continue to have questions and reach out to you based on the information that you shared today. Right now, we're going to give people a break for a couple minutes, and then we'll be back here at 1 for the start of our session. So thank you so much again.
thank you.